Eli in the studio. Joining me today is former law enforcement officer, medic, UOR investigator, paranormal, Greg Feynman. He is here to share with our listeners about the mystery of cattle mutilations. Greg, welcome to this edition of FYI, sir.
How you doing today, Eli?
Doing really well. Thank you for being on today's show. Unexplained livestock deaths have been reported for decades. Explanations range from predators to UFOs. These carcasses have stunned ranchers who found them. The animals' ears, eyes, udders, tongue, and sex organs have been routinely removed.
That's correct. I'm going to be speaking from the experiences of one ranch that I've been investigating.
Okay.
This ranch has had 16 cattle mutilations, and I call them unusual bovine deaths, and I just say UBD for short instead of cattle mutilations. But there's been 16 UBDs on that property. There's a 1 mile stretch of highway that crosses this property. And on that 1 mile stretch, there's been, prior to 2005, there's been 16 traffic accident related deaths. I got myself on that ranch. And what I did differently than anyone else, again, I'm not putting anyone's investigation down or anything. I just wanted to do mine different because people are still scratching their heads. And a lot of people, they investigate the cow that's been killed. And there's nothing wrong with that, but to me, I mean, the way I wanted to do this investigation, that's the crumbs. I want to know, like, who's doing it, So what I did differently is I got in contact with someone who had God-given abilities, and it was just an experiment to put that person at the site of a cattle mutilation where one had happened, and just see what they get. It was just an experiment. Who knows if, how it's going to go, but I got in contact with someone that had abilities, and I put them on that property. And let me tell you, this person didn't know anything about the subject before I brought her out. And what she was able to say when she went out to the site was just unbelievable.
Greg, no tracks, no footprints, no immediate blood in the vicinity. The first time you witnessed a desiccated carcass, what was your initial assessment?
I was a sheriff's deputy at the time that I saw this. To be honest with you, I wasn't into them as much as I was now. My focus was thought differently as a sheriff's deputy. I was, I had other focuses on law enforcement, but when we got called out there, I was going on a dead cow that died unusually kind of thing. But when I got there and I saw what I saw, the cow is all cut up. That's why they call it mutilated. It's all cut up, and there isn't 1 ounce of blood, 1 drop anywhere. You can't find blood anywhere. As a paramedic, I've seen people cut their arm, not even an artery, and man, blood's everywhere, but not even a drop. And not only that, it's the animal's own tracks aren't there. And so it totally alludes to the fact the cow was killed somewhere else where all that was done to it. I had no answer back then for it. I didn't even know what it caught my eye. I didn't know what to think of it, but everyone kind of has an idea like who the culprit is, but no one will say it. They just the sheriff's, it's not the sheriff's department. It's not the sheriff's fault that these are happening. There is no sitting sheriff that's going to be able to stop these things from happening. It's not the sheriff's fault. All right. I'll tell you that right now. And they take them seriously. They don't joke around with it. They take them seriously, but there's only so much that can be done. Photos, a report, owner information. That's it.
Project UOR, what was your driving force initially starting this project of probably a pretty big undertaking, Greg?
It's pretty crazy. All of a sudden one day I'm disabled and I don't have any employment at the time, and all of a sudden I just started waking up at 4 a.m. All right, And I never wake up at that time. All right. When I was a paramedic and I'd get called at that time, I'd think, who's up at this time? You know, but I was waking up at that time, and I was immediately started working on that. I wanted to investigate the cattle mutilations, and how was I going to do it? From that day, I started working on it. I had to develop a theory. I had to, develop everything. I had to come up with how I was going to make a paranormal investigation team, and think about all the paperwork that needs, at any business. I had to develop all that paperwork, so a witness can fill out if they saw something unusual, they can fill out a form. Every time I went out to the ranch, I had to do a written report. So I had to come up with a form on the computer so I can do written reports. So, all those things took time to put together. I had to come up with liability forms, so the rancher's not going to be at fault if I fall down and get hurt, he doesn't get sued. Things like that had to come up. I had to come up with. Then I had to get someone with abilities. I had to get all the ways to record all this. I have body cameras, infrared cameras, full spectrum cameras, SLS cameras, and I call it a professional camera, but it's the one that we do a lot of our manual recording with. And when we go out, there's at least 3 cameras rolling at all times.
Colorado seems to be a hotbed for cattle mutilations. Have you experienced any type of radioactive activity or residue after maybe the forensic investigation?
Well, I can tell you the experience that I've had, that I've been on some that's had radiation, and the radiation, I don't know how long it stays, because the rancher reported a UBD to me during my investigation. One happened. When we got out there, it had been dead a while, and I checked with my Geiger counter, and there was no radiation found, but there was nothing left for radiation to be in. But the type of radiation is interesting. What the type of radiation that it is, the type the type that you find on meteorites. So it's like the cow, I believe, is being radiated because it's in close proximity to something else that's radiated.
The bones from the cow, have you found that they've been maybe not dismembered, but there's fractures or maybe cracks in the skeletal remains of the carcass?
I could say on previous ones, I'm not really sure, but I can tell you the one that I was on, it looked like it was dropped maybe 10 feet at most. So there wasn't a lot of, it might have looked like a rib might have been broken on it, because there was nothing but ribs and a skeleton left. And there was an indentation in the ground like it had been dropped from a little distance. But a little known fact about a lot of these killings, and not just I'm talking about ones that I'm not on, as well, that long bones are broken because they're being dropped from a distance of about 30 feet to about 90 feet.
Travel Channel podcasts, and I've listened to a few of your podcasts. They're fantastic. And possibly future episodes of Coast to Coast with George and Ori. It took you 4 years to put this project together. Being a former police officer and medic, did that make it easier to initiate this project, Greg?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of things that I did in my life prepared me for what I'm doing now. As far as reports, as far as how I wanted to do in the investigation, I took a lot of law enforcement aspects into the investigation. As far as the paperwork, witness reports, supplemental reports, follow-up reports, all those are different report forms that I had to come up with. And those are all things that happen, you end up doing with the police department. But I mirrored a lot of the things I did as a cop. A lot of the report writing that I did as a cop, I mirrored for my team. Even as much so as any team member that I get, I swear in to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth to help them God.
Greg, are those witness reports filed with any other agencies besides the UOR, which yourself has organized?
Well, again, these witness reports that I've had, I've only been really investigating since I've started this thing. I've had a couple small investigations, but for the main thing, I've been on this ranch. And everything all the experience that I have, I've learned a lot of it out on this ranch. Not everything, but again, I put the law enforcement aspect into it by writing reports on every single time I'm out there, by going by nothing but the facts, not by going on what I think it might be or it's fact. That's kind of how I've done it, except the difference, how I did it differently is I brought someone that has God-given abilities. And when I brought her to the site, I was bringing her there. She said she didn't know anything about this subject, nothing at all. And I said, I don't want you to know anything, hon. It's what you get when you get there. Well, when she gets there, it was the first reading she did, because I think we jumped ahead of ourselves, but I was out at a location of the property where the bones of the cow were still there, and I was shown where the cow was actually found. And a couple days later, I'm bringing Mama Sue out to that same location, and we walk her down to where the bones are, and she picks up a bone. And when she did, her voice started quivering. Like I said, she had goosebumps, the hair on her arms stood all the way up, and she immediately picked up on how scared the cow was when it was killed.
So the cow was actually traumatized before the actual...
Well, she just picked up on the bone, on how scared that cow was when it died. Then she pointed right to where that cow was found. She didn't know. She pointed where that cow was found and said it was a craft that comes in. And it's about 30 feet off the ground. A light comes out from under the craft and it encompasses the cow. And in a blink of an eye, faster than you can bat an eye, the ship's gone, the cow's gone, everything's gone. The second the cow's on board, the blood is immediately evacuated from the body. It's just gone that quick. And then they said they do this mad scientist experiments to it, and when they bring it back, they don't leave it nicely.
If you are just joining us on this edition of FYI, I'm speaking with Mr. Greg Feynman. He was a former law enforcement officer, medic, and he started the UOR investigation project Paranormal. Greg is here to share with our listeners, not only in northern New Mexico, but in southern Colorado, about the mystery of cattle mutilations. Greg, what else would you like to share with our listeners today? Maybe a story that might relate to what we're talking about.
Well, I can say that this is what's happening on this ranch. I can't guarantee every single thing that's considered a mutilation is going to be done by, who we say it is. Now, on that initial reading, I'll tell you right now, she said it was the Grays doing it. She didn't know anything about paranormal. She didn't, she has abilities, but she was only doing a particular thing with her abilities, and it had nothing to do with UFOs or cryptids or anything like that, which that's what I wanted. I didn't want someone that had all that. I just wanted someone that had abilities. And I didn't know it was going to turn into this, but, long story short is we were all meant for this investigation, including her. Yeah, they're still continuing. They're still happening. And I asked her, because there's been 16 traffic accident-related deaths and 16 mutilations, does that mean they're over because they're even? Or is there more? And Sue said, Mama Sue says, unfortunately, I believe until they're going to continue.
Greg, some ranchers claim that suffered the worst losses because of mutilations. They believe that the federal government had performed the mutilations, which I find that kind of hard to believe.
How fast can the government do anything, first of all? All right.
Okay, I like that.
All right, so, all right, and the rancher, his ranch, or his house, pretty much kind of overlooks his ranch in a way. The killings are all within eyeshot of his property or his ranch house. And what's done to these cows, if it was people, it would take not only the hours involved, it would from the night into the morning hours, but they would need an enormous amount of light. They'd need an enormous amount. It would take an enormous undertaking to be able to do one cow. And if people think it's helicopters, black helicopters flying around, just throw that one right out the window.
I was going to mention that
because
about
it ain't helicopters picking them up. Mm-hmm. These things are being dropped, but you really can't drop. I mean, it takes a ground crew to have a helicopter. They got to hook these cows up in the middle of the night, and the rancher's not going to know a thing. And, no way. It ain't the government. It ain't satanic cults. It's none of that. All right. Because these are all happening with the rancher not seeing a thing, and they're within eyeshot of the property.
How many more years do you plan to stay at the ranch where you're at right now doing the investigations?
Well, I told you what I think, what they told us. I'm going to keep going until I'm, because we didn't get into much of this, but I'm basically going to keep going on this until I ain't here no more. Until it could be a year from now, it could be a couple of years from now. We've been in contact with them, we've talked to them, we know why they're doing them. And they spilled the beans on the cattle mutilations. They told us who's involved. That there's a ground crew who chooses which cow's next to be chosen. And, maybe we could talk about that on another, thing. But there's a lot to this investigation that I couldn't come out with because we had a few minutes to talk. But there's so much to this investigation. If I bring anything out, it's going to require explanation,
Could you possibly be summoned to another ranch, possibly with your help and your sophisticated equipment that you have?
Yeah, word gets around to other ranchers. But to be honest with you, I don't believe they're going to be happening on any other ranch other than the ones that they're on right now, because they're interested more in other things on that property other than just the cows. There's other things that are drawn to that property, all right? It's usually the ones that are going to have the problem. Now, we had one recently that they had one back in the 80s, they believe, and this one was different. And there was blood visible on this cow, a lot of blood. And the chest, there had been cuts on the chest that looked like incisions, but it looked like the cow was moving when it was being done. It looked like the cow was alive when it was being done, and the skin had been peeled back on the chest, and there was a pool of blood on that skin that was laying on the ground. And that's way more blood than you don't see any blood, and this one had blood. So 2 days later, I brought Mama Sue to the site, and I couldn't get her all the way to the cow because of the terrain. We didn't need to. She was getting plenty where we were at. When she started communicating with Fitz said, "This is not our work. Was done by another alien tribe that doesn't have our best interest in mind or have your best interest in mind. And Greg, they definitely don't like you. And they're going to destroy your Jeep, and they're going to destroy your computers and everything that you have to do with this investigation." And when I went out that first day, I forgot to mention, I had like a $400 body camera that just fried while I was out there. And come to find out, it was done by that alien tribe, supposedly. They fried my camera, or fried my body camera. Within a week, both of my computers went down on a touch, where they went down, and it took a guy to get back into my hard drives. Now, they went down on a touch, but when he went to get into my hard drives, they were encrypted with a level of encryption that he said it was never supposed to be able to get into something ever again. And he was able to get into it. And that was with I had all my footage. And then 3 months later, which that's not very long with me going with my Jeep. I don't go very many places, but I was coming back from the ranch and I hit a horse total in my Jeep. And we're talking in the city limits, I hit a horse. And this horse just came out of nowhere. And I've got it recorded. It's not like what you think. If you see my videos, you'll see me hitting that horse, and you'll see how unusual that whole incident was. So everything happened just like they said. They destroyed my computers, and they destroyed my Jeep.
You've compiled 2 years of video. I need to ask you, sex organs, blood, could they be utilized for other life form, starting maybe on another planet possibly?
You nailed something pretty close. There's things that are happening that coincide with the Bible. It says in the Bible that there are going to be some people walking right into a new world without dying. without tasting death. All right? There's going to be people that get new bodies. All right? They're going to be instantly transformed into those bodies. But here's the thing. It's not an instantaneous process. It's not instantaneous. The ones that get those bodies, well, they're chosen long before. They got to get those people ready for those bodies. All right? That's just what I've found. But everything that it says in the Bible, you read what it says in the Bible, and that's pretty much how it's going to happen. But, there's a mechanism to how everything happens. They said, in the Bible, it said that the Israelites followed a cloud by day and a pillar of light by night. It said there was a cloud of God that rested upon the mountain of God, the Mount Sinai, all right, and fire, all right. Well, during this investigation, Fitz has showed me how they can manipulate clouds, how they can use clouds as cover, how they can. I was talking to a buddy of mine who lives in Northern California, and he was outside. I didn't know this, but he was outside talking on his porch, and his porch overlooks a lake. And I said, "Hey, man, I need to tell you something." Fitz told me that they're going to start showing themselves to you in cloud formation wherever you get a good look at the sky from your house. And he interrupted me and said, "Greg, a cloud just formed directly in front of me as you said that. And I'm going to take a photo of it and send it to you." Let me tell you, that happened. And that cloud was the same cloud that I had photoed about a year prior right out in front of my house when I read in 2 Chronicles 6:1, and Solomon said, God said he would dwell in a dark cloud. And then I go out to my front door. At that time I was smoking cigarettes, and I went out to my front door to have a cigarette, and I looked out, and there sits this dark cloud, just resting, just sitting there. So I took a photo of it. And it changed color and density right on camera when I did it. But I took a photo of it, and wouldn't you know it, that cloud that showed up at my friend, in Northern California was just like it, about the same distance away. Yeah.
For our friends that don't know the reference to Fitz, share with us, if you will.
I call Fitz Friends in the Sky. And the reason is, they're called the Greys. And I don't like that name. All right, we don't refer to other people as their as a skin color. I don't want to refer to them as the Greys. I just think that's I don't like
profile, it. Right?
Yeah, it's just So I asked them, "What can we call you?" Well, we can't say their name. Their name sounds almost like a whale sounds. All right, so we couldn't even say it, but they said to call us friends. And in the 2 years we've been in contact, they've done nothing but show how they are our friends. Here's the thing. True colors start showing on people after, you might not know someone for a little bit, but you move in with them, and all of a sudden, their true colors start showing. You find out what kind of person they are. Well, we've gotten down to the nitty gritty with them, and they've everything that they have asked me to do. Everything they've asked me to do has been to know God better. That's what they want me to do. That's what they want me to spend my time on. To get a better relationship with Christ, and that's what they're wanting everyone to do, is get a relationship with Christ. Because let's say that in a couple of years, things life as we know it is going to be completely different, and they've shown how that's true by how things are coming true as we speak now. And so, that being said, it's really important, they said, now to be a good person. It's more important now to be a good person than ever. People are going to be judged by their heart. And they'll be judged by a lot more than that, but it's more important now to be good than ever. And they said that they want to spread the word love and kindness and be good to one another, and don't steal, and that's what they're trying to get across. And that's what the message is, because what's going to be happening, really there's not a whole lot that's going to stop it.
In conclusion, Greg, we have about 2 minutes left for this edition. In a nutshell, brief overview. What would you like to tell our listeners today, both in New Mexico and Colorado?
Well, if you're interested in the story, because I didn't get this, it kind of came in chunks, go to Stitcher.com and then type in Ryan Singer, and he's got a show, Me and Paranormal You. And I've been on there about 7 times telling the story from beginning to end. And and then we're doing a documentary based off all the footage that we're doing, and that'll be coming out here shortly, probably within the year.
Contact information in case somebody has something to share with you.
If they ever call the radio station, you can always get a hold of me.
Okay, sure. You bet.
And I'll be out there in a second.
719-846-3355. Greg Feynman, God bless you. Thank you so much for this candid and informative interview today for KCRT and for FYI, sir. We appreciate your hard work. Maybe we can have another interview soon, sir.
I'd love to do that.